Hey guys, BJ the Brave here, back with part 2 of episode 9 of our FORGECAST, which is, of course, our Warpforge podcast, back with my brother in arms, the Ecclesiarch. How are you, sir?
Doing great and all ready to discuss the meta and changes and everything. That is, I think, the biggest thing that everybody's concerned with right now.
Well, you should be doing good. You are sitting pretty, about 200 points clear on top of the ladder at the point of recording this, which is awesome. Congrats, by the way.
Well, let's hope I stay there.
Well, the gold carback is actually pretty nice this season. I don't know if you've seen it. Have you had a look at it?
I did, and
Yeah.
actually, this one actually looks good. That's one of the reasons why I thought maybe I should actually try to compete this
Yeah.
season.
Yeah. Well, you're in the position, right? It means doing all the sensible stuff, doesn't it? Which is not always the fun thing, like sticking with the deck and then also playing and not playing at the right times. Like probably need to play like not too much at the minute, right? Like you've got to know when to camp and then when to play a bit again and all that sort of stuff. But anyway, yeah,
So,
we'll see how it goes. We've still got a long way to go this season. Yeah, so guys, we've just had a great chat about our experiences with collecting Tau since they came out, and we just talked in part 1 over on Ecclesiarch's channel a little bit about kind of like what we've been playing and how we're finding the ladder just from our experience and stuff. What we're going to just look at now is we're going to dive. I thought we'd dive into the meta stats a little bit, Ecclesiarchs. They were released a few days ago by EG. I did do a meta report, and I know you did a Warlord tier list. So if you've not seen those videos, guys, go and check them out. I really liked your Warlord tier list, by the way, and I pretty much
yeah,
agree quite heavily with it.
based a little bit on your reasoning as well,
Mm.
because I was planning on putting Turbigon a little bit lower, but when you mentioned it about the gas matchup, I was like, okay, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I think like the stats don't always show. Like we know what people are playing at top of ladder, and we're almost like not ahead of the meta, but we're right like present with it, if that makes sense. Whereas that data, I think, could be quite misleading. Like you could read that data and go, "Oh, I should play Swarmlord then," right? Because according to that data, Swarmlord's doing fantastic, and it's like, no, no, no. You're gonna think you're the worst player ever if you play Swarmlord right now. You're like, why do I keep losing? It's like because it's not the meta. But anyway, yeah. So let's have a little look at the stats, and then I thought we'd just perhaps finish up with a bit of
Yeah.
discussion about kind of like what maybe we look at the different factions and just talk about what do we think the game needs right now in terms of nerfs and buffs, and kind of like yeah, we'll go from there. And maybe we'll touch in. I know people like when we talk about the guilds as well, which we haven't got yet, but
Yeah, man.
we could touch on that as well. All right, let's start with the. I've got the data here, so let's get this up on the screen. Okay, there we go. Can you see that?
Let me check.
Ah, I know what I've failed to do. No, I need to share my screen on here, so just
Yeah.
give me a second. Okay. I thought I was being so ahead of the game as well, like getting it up on the on the screen and everything. Oh God, it's all going wrong, Ecclesiarch. It's all going wrong. Hold up. Right, here we go. The light of the Talvar.
Oh, there we
Right,
go.
is that better?
Yes, sir.
Here
That
we
is.
go. Here we go. Okay, cool. So, there we go. Let's just start here, if you don't mind, because this is like the first. This is like the first thing about the report that I think is sometimes like a bit confusing in a way because um, buried down, deep down. Can you see?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see that data, yeah. So it always starts up here, doesn't it, with all this stuff? But I wanted to start with the legendary division warlord because at the end of the day, I don't know about you, but when I think about the meta, I think about like, what are the guys at the top of the ladder doing? Like, how have they got there? What are the best decks right now? What are the most refined versions of those decks? And that is on the, that is in legendary division, and more specifically, that is in the top 50, right? So I like to come here for the sort of more meaningful data. Um, so yeah, what stands out for you? What is this data telling you? But also, what additional insight do you kind of like want to
Mm,
share about it?
there's a couple of important things that I want to actually share about that. I think the number one thing that stands out, and obviously it should not be a surprise for anybody, is, I mean, you can see that the Gaskell is on top. And I think that should not be surprising for anybody. I would say that he most probably even has a higher win rate right now than it's showing here, because he has been very good ever since the Tau got added. Now, the fact that Gaskell has 63-point win rate, even though Tervagon used to dominate before the Tau arrived, shows that he's in a very, very good spot. He's deserving of the first spot and let's say the spot of the king, right? He's definitely there. Then, however, we get to see something that really has changed. So you really need to understand that, guys, when you're looking at it, because the second one is Tervagon, while the third one is Swarmlord, right? So that, I think, is very wrong currently, and I'll explain my reasoning as of why. Now, Swarmlord and Tervagon, I mean, Tyranids have always been scary, especially the Swarmlord has always been on top of the Tyranid food chain, and ever since the Tervagon changes arrived, Tervagon became very powerful. However, with the addition of the Tau, they have been knocked down like heavily, especially Swarmlord. Swarmlord is kind of, it's not useless. It can still do some things, like Shumatsu has been adapting using the Molochs and stuff like that, but it's still not good enough because, like, let's imagine for a second, you play against Commander Omezos, he drops a marker drone and you lose. Okay, so that's pretty much what it is, right? Unless you get lucky enough to get a very good early game with your spores, with AoE and stuff like that. But even then, like, it's very, very difficult. So Swarmlord is going to be, in reality, I think is going to be way lower in the win rate currently than he is right now. Tervagon, I can totally understand, but Tervagon was like overpowered for a little bit. I mean, I think it's still very powerful. It's just that Tau have been keeping him in check. So it kind of makes sense that it has 60% win rate right now. Another thing that people often, that I want to say that people often ignore is the use rate.
Yes.
Because if you have a very high win rate, but you have a user rate of 0.1, that just means that there's one guy who's playing it and he's playing it well.
Yeah.
Now, look at that. For example, Abaddon, 15%. So Black Legion always has a high use rate. And despite that, the fact that Abaddon has 56, it could very well mean that if Abaddon had a lower use rate, maybe he would be 58 or 59. And it makes sense because Abaddon has been very strong ever since the Venom Crawler change, right? It has been there. However, there's two other things that I want to note. So one is the fact that Onva is already there, as well as Commander Omezos, which is a big deal, guys, honestly, because if you remember what happened when Terror of Vandergast came out, he was the worst warlord, and everybody said, well, okay, he's new. That's why he's the worst warlord, right? So the problem with Terror of Vandergast was that he wasn't nearly as good and as well optimized as the Tau, right? But another very important thing that I'm glad that you scrolled down is that Boss Zaxtruk has a very low win rate. That is also, like, he's the lowest win rate currently, but there is a reason for that, and I'll tell you my reasoning, BJ, and then we'll move on to you. I think the problem there is that Boss Zaxtruk is probably the best against the Tau out of all the warlords. But his problem is the existence of Gordrang. Because if you have a Gordrang into Boss Zaxtruk, you're not going to win as Boss Zaxtruk. It's impossible. Because he keeps you stunned and you don't have a warlord power. Your talent is gone. It's not doing anything anymore, right? So he's just the better you in that sense. But now, with the Tau coming, I think that the Zaxtruk actually might be a little bit better than Warboss Gordrang. Well, as long as you pray that you don't run into a Gordrang, he's going to be pretty good. So that's a point that we should keep in mind. And of course, Galen is also up there. Galen is always good. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, your Gaskell deck, but just put Zagstruck in, would do very well against Tau right now.
Absolutely.
That's true for sure. And good points there on that. I mean, yeah, you've nailed it. I mean, you've said a lot. I think the key things for me to point out were definitely about the Swarmlord and Gordrang. This was pre-Tau, right? They got a lot of this win rate pre-Tau, and that doesn't reflect the meta since Tau got released. Swarmlord and Gordrang significantly weaker because they're melee-based warlords, and that doesn't help you against Tau, not one bit. I also like your point about Abaddon and user rate, because the thing is with like 14.78 is like, say someone's got like, I don't know, 58%. Say Swarmlord's 58% at Legendary, right? But the only person playing Swarmlord is Shumatsu. Right? It's like, okay, yeah, well done. Shimatsu's got a 58% win rate. He's the best Tyranny player. Of course, he's got a high win rate. But if you've got 15% user rate, that says that Abaddon isn't just good in the hands of a great player. Abaddon is good in the hands across multiple different players. That says more to me about how good Abaddon is. But again, this is pre-Tau, so Abaddon would probably have been higher actually, and then obviously the Tau and the Tervigon matchup is tough as well for Abaddon. Although Abaddon actually has a good matchup against Gazgul, there are not many warlords that have good matchups against Gazgul right now, but I would say that Tervigon does, and I would say that Abaddon, the late game version, and probably the combo version too, probably both have pretty good matches into Gazgul. The combo version because Gazgul's slow and he gives you a chance to gather all your pieces. And the late game because it can actually played well. It can actually outvalue. Like Gazgul obviously has very good removal, but eventually he's going to run out of removal. And all it takes with Chaos is like one turn where it puts two middle-sized bodies down, and it's game over pretty much. Like if you can't answer that board, you're done. So they tend to win in the late game. But anyway, I mean, I think you nailed it. It was interesting to me to see Uriel drop. Obviously Uriel was the top of the meta last season. I think he had a 60%. So you can see that he's lost a lot of his win rate, right? That changed to his warlord power. I agree with you 100%. I think if EG listened to this, I'd really loved them to consider reversing that and just see what happens to Uriel because he won't go a 60% win rate again. Trust me, not with Tower, not with Gazgul. The Orcs now have the Gordrang release, right? Like you said, they've got the armor and stuff. They didn't have that for half of the Uriel meta. So I really want, because I think they've killed the archetype. That's my problem. My problem isn't that they're weaker and that they don't have as good a high win rate. It's that Ultramarines, it was fun. Like they actually had, like the game doesn't even have many aggro builds right now. And I actually think by having a good aggro deck, it could be really interesting. It's such a shame they nerfed Uriel because Tau struggled a little bit in the early game, right? And it would have been really interesting, maybe from a round robin perspective, like a rock scissors paper type of thing, to see where Uriel would have slotted into this meta. It
Absolutely.
also would have done very well into Tervigon, right? Because Tervigon needs time to build up. So Uriel would have been a really good counter to Tervigon. So. Also, other thing of interest for me is just that Shadow Sun is significantly lower than the other two. So,
Huh.
I don't know if he is in the global. He is in top 50. Let's have a look where Shadow. Okay, so in global, actually, Shadow Sun is much higher. So,
That's so much. Oh yeah.
yeah,
It is.
so I think what that and bear in mind, Shadow Sun is the legendary card, so it's not like it's because all beginners don't have Shadow Sun, right? So I think what that's telling me is that Shadow Sun makes use of the good squad. We talked about Tau having the best squad, the best overall card collection. But what it means is at the top levels, where you're looking at the most refined decks, Shadow Sun's power level is not quite up there with Omasis and Onvar.
Shadow Sun is just the least cheesy, I think, is the
Yeah,
thing there.
yeah, yeah. And I like Shadow Sun. It's a really one of
I
the
do.
problems that Tau has. I can't tell you the amount of times where I was looking at the board and I have this like 4 range attack, like Crisis Suit, for example, and I need to clear a unit that has 5 health. That's it. I'm like, where am I going to? Tau don't have many pings. They don't have little one pings like Imhotep and Neurothrope and all that sort of stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'm 1 damage off. And having Shadow Sun for that is brilliant. Like, Shadow Sun just gives +1 range to any unit he wants. And it's like, okay, Crisis Suit, there you go, you've got 5. Now you've got 5 range attack. Go clear the board. So Shadow Sun, if you like trading the board, Shadow Sun is very good for that. It's very neat. It can tidy up the board. It's definitely got the better control element. It's just that Onvar is super powerful. Like, Onvar is insanely flexible and just insanely competitive. I think Onvar might be. I think Onvar is the best warlord. Sorry for Tau. They do say in here, though, dude, I don't know if you noticed this at the top. They do say quite early on that the new faction's win rate has been trending down since its arrival.
Oh, I'll tell you what the reason for that is. It's very simple. Is that people actually realize that they should optimize their decks against the Tau now. Because I mean, when something drops, it's very easy to say, "Oh my God, it's impossible," because you don't know what you don't know like how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Though, BJ, there's like a couple of points that I actually want to make, and let's actually take this time to talk about Tau for a little bit. So I think there is one specific thing with the Tau that perhaps people are people are like as you know, like mostly what has been going on currently is that people are very angry and saying that the Tau is nuts, right? It's not that Tau is nuts. I think when you said that it's a very good faction, I agree that it's a very good faction. It has a very good skeleton in general, so it has some very cool things. I like the long range. I like almost everything about the Tau. There is just one thing that I think goes towards the level of toxicity.
Go.
Like for example, if somebody says Onva is crazy strong, it's easy to nerf. Just make his armor affect adjacent units or something. You know, what I'm saying is it would never be difficult
You think
to.
the armor's the problem with Omega?
No. I'm just saying,
Oh,
like,
okay.
if somebody says that, like,
Okay,
it's
right.
easy to
You can
change that,
adapt him.
right?
You can adapt him. Yeah,
Yeah, look, and you can adapt some other thing as well. If somebody says, for example, once again, all order to deal is crazy strong, okay, reduce melee attack by 1 or something. It's really to adapt. I think the main thing that the Tau is creating a problem by is the drones, but I'm not saying it's necessarily Commander or Mesos. I think the main problem is that since drones are flying and they also have 3 HP, it puts a lot of factions in an awkward position. So, for example, yeah, if you play a pink warlord when you're playing against Omesos is kind of in a bit of a trouble because you're killing it every turn, right? Whatever he drops. But that's the thing. Omesos is not the problem. I think the main thing that kind of is rustling everybody's jimmies is the companion, because a lot of times the Tau can just build a big board from nothing because of those savior protocols. So once again, I'm not saying that it's the most meta deck. I still think that the mixture of suits and battle drones and like a little bit of a balanced build is good. It's just that sometimes there are things that are a little obnoxious. For example, if a Tau gets experimental drones and follows up with that 5 energy card that drops the Vanguard drones, it's kind of game over because he can, and it can also drop things like the support turret and sniper turret and stuff like that. So it can get a little obnoxious.
It should not
And
be
that
able
is
to. It should not be able to drop 3. I think I know. I know when we do nerfs and stuff, you have to remind me. But I think that value sacrifice is too overpowered, man. It should only drop 2 drop drones, not 3 drop drones. But anyway.
Yeah, there's that's one of the problem cards, and the other thing is I think mainly what they need to think about is not just nerfing Tau. I think it's the question of how are we gonna change it so that a warlord like Swarmlord just does not auto hit resign. I think one of the more healthy changes that I'll say would be to make marker drones target troops instead of, for example, let's say, and I'll tell you why, because that card that they have to give marker light 2 to enemy warlord, that's totally enough because Ravenheart Guard had that for whom the bell tolls. It was literally the same card, but for 5 energy. And that's what they did. They built up a board, they put it on your warlord, and they just murder you. So you don't really need marker drones to be stacking that on the enemy warlord. Instead of perhaps nerfing the HP or making drones grounded or something in order to just kill the identity, why don't you just make sure that it does not target the enemy warlord? So they could do a number of changes, actually. Like what they could do, they could definitely leave the Guardian drone as it is. What they could do is they could make, for example, marker drones target only troops. Maybe if somebody thinks that the gun drone is a problem, maybe give gun drone less HP. I don't know. There's like, what I'm saying is don't just say, okay, drones need to be reduced to 2 HP. It's gonna affect everything across the board. See what I mean? So I think the nerfs that they make should be a little more aimed towards making it in a way that other factions can answer what you play. Maybe, for example, reduce the companion to companion 1 instead of companion 2. There's like a lot of things that they need to consider. But once again, they should not do all of these things at once. See what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if you reduce the cost of the HP of drones, but also reduce the companion, suddenly it's not good anymore, right? Because then Abaddon is just going to smash Traitor's Hate and everything is dead. But I think that's one of the things that people need to keep in mind, that Tau currently, I think, need fine-tuning and not just like insane nerfs. Because as soon as you give the factions the ability to control the drone spam, I think it's going to be a good faction. I think it's going to be a really nice faction. So what do you think?
Oh man. Yeah, I don't know what the answer is because I don't like the answer of make drones 2 HP. I think if you do
Hmm.
that, I mean you just kill Mesos, right? Like um obviously with Necrons and with Galen, when they drop a unit that can be killed by the enemy warlord, there is an additional payoff. There's a remnant or there's a spirit stone.
Yeah, with
Now,
Gaskull, it's also a
Gazgul
buff card.
Gazgul can be killed, but Gazgul has this additional thing that if you don't kill it, it can keep growing, and um, also, and it works for Gazgul in a sense because one of the things that the Grot does for Gazgul is it's almost like +2 health, right? Like if you were trying to beat
Hmm.
Gazgul down, you can't just ignore this Grot. So, well, actually, that's up for debate. Potentially, you can ignore it if you were trying to beat Gazgul down, but that's another another story. Um, I
It's
think
scary to ignore it because if it somehow ends up that he has a mob unit coming up, then you regret it.
exactly, exactly. So I don't know how to. I think the Guardian drone. If they said they were going to nerf Marker and Gun to 2 HP, but keep the Guardian drone as 3, that's maybe a thing. I definitely think Valued Sacrifice should only be able to pull 2-drop drones. I don't think that should be able to drop 3-drop drones. It's insane value. I played a game the other day. A guy drew 2 DS8s and the sniper drone. Oh, and they were shielded.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's
I was just
that's
like,
crazy.
that's game over then. Um, I don't know how I feel about the Markalite suggestion because here's the thing, like it's logical and I get it, and I'm like, yeah. The thing is, what I like about it is from a theme perspective because there's something quite unique about the Tau design in that you truly can create this like Mont-Car situation where you don't attack the enemy warlord and you just keep building over time, and you use Markalites are building up, and then in one round you just go and kill it. And I think that's kind of cool because I know it feels right really cheesy on the turn they do it, but you've got to remember they haven't been hitting your warlord the whole game. Like in a different build, there'd have been there'd have been 3 points, then 4 points, then 5 points, then 2 points. They'd have been chipping away at the hell. All they did is chose not to attack and do the damage then when they could, and they did it later to make you. So I do think there's a fun design element, but obviously we've got to make sure it's not too toxic. I actually think that Onvar is a bit of a problem. I actually think that getting access to Storm of Fire is in many ways a bigger issue. Like if you think about Storm of Fire, like being able to give everything like +2 range attack, it's a bit like having proper Killy or Ravenous Hunter from the Tyranids, just having it on tap, like every turn. Like it's like, at least in the Tyranid, or at least in the Tyranids, you've got to draw Ravenous Hunter. It's this one legendary card. You might
Hmm.
not get it, and even Orcs like proper Killy, you had to draw it. There were 2 of them, and even then they nerfed it because it was too powerful. Whereas Onvar's
Yeah.
just got access to this when he wants every. Oh, and by the way, if you have a passive turn against me, I'll just use it to bank a Storm of Fire from Onvar. I'll save that for later. Thank you very much. So I think that is something that is way more broken and would really reduce the win rates. They would have to go much more later game to get the win, rather than just ending it early with a cheesy Storm of Fire. So I do think that Onvar's a problem. In answer to your drones thing, I actually wonder whether drones would be fine if the legendary didn't exist. So
Hmm. Or it's changed a little bit.
yeah, I really think giving shields to drones tips them over the edge. So like
Hmm.
when I'm playing against drones, I'm like, okay, this is frustrating. There's all these 3 health things, but I can kind of fight it. Like I'm fighting. It's tough. It's close. It's hard, but I'm not. I don't feel like the game's over. But when you put stat shielded thing down, then I just think like, should I just end the game? Like, how am I ever going to overcome this value? Like, now I'm in this weird thing where I've got to race you. I've got to race you. Do you know what I mean? And then like, well, what happens if I'm playing a deck where that's not really possible? So, I actually think if they change that, I'm not sure how to change it. By the way, like maybe it gives like uh maybe maybe it could be a draw card. Maybe it could, for example, like right now, people don't run too many drones, especially the 2-drop drones in their actual deck. They do run 3-drop ones, but what if that card like drew 3 drones from your deck, put it in hand,
Um,
and gave them shield or gave them flank? Now that's okay because now that's just a limited number, 2 to 3. It opens up an archetype, right? Like, okay, if you want to build a drone deck, like this is going to help you like draw resources. It gives the power buff, whether it's shield or flank, but it is only so if you played against it, at least you're like, okay, there is 2 or 3 of these. It's not like the entire game, right? I think maybe something
yeah,
like that could be pretty cool. But right now, I do think that card is it's a weird card because in many ways, like it does nothing. Like there'll be many games where it just does nothing either because they don't draw it or they draw it too late and it or they play it on turn 4 and they lose too much tempo and you just beat them down. But when it works, it feels really bad. It feels toxic, and I want to see that card changed. What do you think?
yeah, I think that is spot on because if they get that on curve, and on top of the fact that they get it on curve, if you also get the situation where uh, it's shielded, it becomes just very scary,
Yeah.
because some factions just don't have an answer to that. Because, yeah, when you're playing against the orcs, Tau might not seem like so strong. You'll say, oh, they're good, but they're not that good. But not everybody is an orc, right? Unfortunately, the world should be green, but you know what I mean, right? It's a very, very hard thing to really do. And like dealing with those drones and things like that, it's just for some factions it is very unfair, is what I'm saying.
Mm,
I think the main thing that we need is that so that all the factions have like about equal chances of dealing with the threat, right? Everybody should have a way of dealing with this problem.
mm,
And that's the problem that we probably have currently, that not all factions can deal with the Tau. Let's say I played a Tyranids, like what am I supposed to do against such an AoE? All I can really hope for is that you didn't draw well, and if you didn't draw well, well then maybe I can one shot you later.
mm.
But that's a maybe once again, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I think you're spot on. I think they've got to be careful because they could. I don't want to see what happened to Ultramarines happen. I don't want to see the faction get
Yeah,
nerfed
no.
into. And also, that will not be good for the game because people have just either spent money or they've just started collecting. They've invested in collecting, and if they just nerf them, like I saw a lot of people saying, "Oh, wait a month, they'll nerf the tower," and I'm like, well, that's terrible because if your strategy is to release overpowered cards and then nerf them the next month, like people aren't stupid and they're going to catch on, and that is suicide for the longevity of the game. And I'm not saying that is their strategy. I'm saying that people will perceive it to be the strategy and they'll
Yeah,
accuse it and they'll somewhat deserve that reputation if they go into. So they've got to be really careful not to sledgehammer the faction. But a couple of subtle changes. I mean, I would say for Tau, step one, and we can play another month and see how we get on. But my step one would be I would change Storm of Fire on Anvar. Either don't give it access to Storm of Fire. Um, I could definitely see that. I could definitely see like they just don't get access to it. Or they change Storm of Fire itself, and it only gives like +1, or it only gives 2 units. Like maybe it gives the Warlord and 2 unit, the adjacent thing.
adjacent ones,
Maybe
yeah.
they just make the adjacent thing for all of the abilities actually. So the armor, the heal, and the Storm of Fire to adjacent units. That could be a more elegant solution. I still think Storm of Fire might be too powerful, even with that. But anyway, for 5 mana, I could swallow that. That would be a good step in the right direction. Experimental drones, I'd like to see that changed. I think, as we just said, I think if they could get that card right, and I'd play a season like that and see what happens. If you want to go to changing the health of the drones, then I would probably want to see something a bit more subtle. So something like maybe the gun drone goes to health 2.
Yeah,
Maybe the marker light stays at 3 but can only marker light troops. and
something like
and
that,
keep
yeah.
the Guardian as it is. But I would like to see what it looks like. Now people are adapting. Before we make that nerf, I'd like to see the other two things I said, because I think they're having a way bigger impact on win rates right now. And go from there. What about the cheapening of the drones? Do we think we haven't talked about that? Do we think that's an issue? You know, things like the Savior Protocol, things like Onshi, things like the Piranha. Do we think that that's OP, like just getting drones for free essentially?
Yeah, that is one of the problems, honestly. I mean, Piranha is once again a good card. It's a great card, but that's the problem with Piranha. On paper, it's an interesting design because it has low stats, low melee, once again, so you can just crump it down with good Daka. But the thing is, well, not with Daka, but in melee, actually. But the whole thing there, the interesting part is that despite the fact that you can do that, it has already spawned 2 gun drones that are flying and have 3 health, right?
Yeah.
And for some factions, that's a loss. Like then they're like looking at it and like, okay, what now? So what am I doing now, right?
Yeah.
If you're an orc, yeah, you just bash the keyboard with your head. The Scorch Assault drops down. So it's like orcs have so many good answers. Perhaps BJ, one of the things is that not all the factions are well optimized with AoE and stuff like that. Like if factions had more options, like I'm not trying to badmouth EG here, but perhaps this could be avoided if they had added, for example, to the Tyranids, instead of just giving them some vanilla cards that are unusable and 3 good cards, they could have added some AoE spells or something. I don't know. Like, I love the Toxic Entanglement. I love the Norn Emissary, and the Tyrant is amazing. Neuro Tyrant. And, well, Vandergast is a new warlord, and I think he can work down the line. But some of the cores like Barbagant and, like, what?
What is that?
What are those? Nobody's ever going to play those.
Yeah.
So instead, you could just make cards and there are things that we still don't have in the game. We don't have AoE. We don't have anti-stealth. Like, we don't have any answer cards that are in HHL. And even though I can see the game maybe perhaps potentially not wanting to add stuff like anti-stealth, well, then you need to think hard because, for example, even the Tyranid mechanic of dropping a Death Leaper and winning the next turn is not fun. It's not good for the game, right?
No.
So there should be ways for everyone to play in order to control some things, right?
Yeah. There should always be something. Yeah, some option.
Yeah, that's the thing.
All right. Is there anything else? We've talked about Tau, nerfs, buffs a little bit. Anything else you want to say on the Tau that you think early on we should look at, nerfs and buffs wise, or are you pretty happy?
I'm not sure. Like, you know, at the beginning I was angry at Long Strike, but then again, now that I think about it, it's not the biggest issue there. It's an issue for Chaos players though. So there could be that. Maybe reduce the marker light to 3 instead of 5 or something. Doesn't really need a big change. Yeah, it's just a good card.
I think the marker light could do with changing. Maybe 2 or 3. I think would feel about right. And it would still be very good, but it wouldn't be stupid. Like 5 is too much. Yeah, but other than that, keep him as is. All right, what about the Necrons then? Look, where do we think, just in terms of nerfs, buffs, where they are in the meta? Anything you'd love to see?
Yes. In the Necrons, first of all, I like to see the last Lich Guard change reverted. It was stupid, I think. I loved the attack reduction on the Lich Guard. It was good. That was a proper nerf because Lich Guard are not meant to be damage dealers. They're meant to be this shield. But reducing their HP, really?
Yeah.
That was, I think, really bad because now you drop the Lich Guard and the Snazwagon takes it out. Like, come on.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I think Necrons are one of those factions that need looking into in terms of other cards. Like, they have some good foundation and good cards. Like, for example, the Praetorian is good. Lich Guard, I think, should revert to health.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to be unhappy, those who hate Necrons, but I think that Lich Guard nerf really killed them.
Yeah, I agree.
I think what they should look at is the Frenzied package once again. And they need to make some normal changes, man. Like, what the hell was with that flying thing, 1-drop? Who's gonna use that? Also, there's another thing. I think the on paper Nemesis is changed to give him extra card. Now that I think about it, isn't too bad because he's meant to be a more swarmy warlord, but it's not gonna make him as more playable. I mean, Ghost Ark was buffed once again. Also good, but here's the thing. I'm still pushing my opinion that they need to add special warlord cards. And I've actually seen a lot of other people saying that like special one-time usage card that starts in your hand as an extra card. For example, I remember when somebody said, just give Keltalk a special card that triggers the Spirit Stone effect of a friendly unit. Why not? Like, with one-time usage, you could tactically use it for a very smart thing. Maybe give Nemesis something that maybe you use a special card, and since he's a master strategist or something, he draws a troop and reduces its cost or something. I'm just saying it.
So it's a bit like the offense and defense cards, but
yeah, like this was by the way just the thing. I don't actually want them to give him a draw card and reduce the cost. That's too like common. I think they should think of something special for Nemesis, and I think it should not be difficult giving his lore. Maybe somehow connect him with Vargard Oberon in some way. It should be really nice. Another very good candidate for getting a special card, I think, would be Uriel. Actually, if you're taking away his extra card, just give him a special card then. But actually, I think the problem is that Uriel was the warlord that totally got fixed, quote unquote, by the extra card. I just want to see Uriel reverted and get his extra card.
100% want to see that revert. I think Uriel would be okay again, viable. Like, I don't think it'd be top of the meta, but I think it'd be viable again. And I think we need an aggro deck or two right now. And Uriel would add a dynamic there. So
yeah, sure. I mean, I totally like that EG actually did what we wanted. They shift the game towards Merc Control. Yeah. But we need one or two aggro decks as well.
But we didn't Uriel was great. But we didn't mean shift the game towards control and nerf the aggro deck. Like it was like have the aggro deck, but give us control tools. Like now you've nerfed the aggro deck, and now you end up in this. Yeah, I think that's a great one. The Uriel reversion would be really good. Is there anything else with the Ultramarines you want to see? I mean, Sicarius, we talk about him every podcast. And
Sicarius, absolutely, Sicarius in Iskandar Archaon. I'm gonna keep saying that until they change it. Like change Sicarius and Archaon. And honestly, guys, like I suggested, like give Sicarius the ability to give your warlord armor until the next turn. That would totally be fine. You released Grizzled Scarboy, so why not have this?
Yeah.
Now there's no doubt that it's playable, right, and doable. Plus, it won't be OP because unlike Grizzled Scarboy, it's not permanent. And Kaon absolutely needs a change. Come on,
he could even give. What is the card? What's the legendary card? It's the legendary.
The invulnerability.
He could even give it that. Like that could be a very unique. Then you'd have a control marine thing where you could have 2 turns of being invulnerable. I mean, look, for 9 energy, you're dropping this big bomb that does nothing. It's got to do something. I like the steps they took with the Winged Hive Tyrant, right? Like. I think the problem with the Tyranids is they don't actually have enough spells that make that viable right now. But I like the direction is correct. Like a big unit comes down, it has an instant effect. Like excellent. Let's see the same for Sicarius. You also mentioned a lot of the other legendaries, though, didn't you? In UM, you said that you actually feel like that you want to see some other changes. Is that right?
I do. First of all, I think that one of the prime candidates is Sergeant Telion. I think he could. I think that's a card that really needs a change. But I'm saying it right away. Don't give it stealth. Like if you're planning to change that card and leave the cost, don't make it stealthy because that high damage with stealth and sniper would be disgusting. Yeah. I think what they could do is maybe consider long range as well on it, which would make a lot. It's a sniper, right? So you could give it long. Now you have a new keyword. Like we've had this many times in Horus Heresy Legions, where when a faction was introduced with a new keyword, let's say the Night Lord keyword was the Terror, then you suddenly see that keyword in other factions with adding unit or first strike and stuff like that. So you could give long range to Telion.
Yeah, because I don't think long range is too. It's not like too identity specific, is it? It's not like the idea of long range is you've got this big long range thing that's hitting, so that's not unique to Tau. It does characterize a lot of Tau, but it's not unique to Tau. So you definitely could have things like a Telion or something with a big long cannon, or you could definitely use long range in other factions. I like that. That's a good one.
Yeah, man. Maybe people will play Telion with a flank or something like that. Would be good. I think what they also need to do with the Ultramarines, but that is tricky. I think that's gonna be fixed with. You know what? This is going to be a little bit of a stretch, but I think one of the main things that they should do, they should not start buffing vehicles like crazy. Instead, what they could do, because Ultramarines already have very good vehicles, is just that they lack the tools to really build a vehicle deck. So I think, well, they can build a very good vehicle deck, but it's not that viable because overall the Ultramarines seem to be missing some spice, right? So I think what they could do is when they receive the drop for the Ultramarines, add some cards that are going to make a difference. Because I played the game from day one when they released Warpforge in Alpha, and Ultramarines weren't that strong. Ultramarines became super strong once during the official release of the game. Two cards were added, I think. This was the Angels of Death as well as the Sternguard Sergeant, I think. So those two things made that aggro Ultramarine like super viable. Because other than that, they were still strong, but everybody was just playing Necron because Emotech was like stupid ever since it came out. Well, actually, it wasn't. When Emotech came out, his ability was random, which was stupid as hell. But when they made it targetable, it became very good. I think one of the things that they should keep in mind is that the Ultramarines have a lot of tools. They have a lot of units that could become good units if they give them small changes. The vanilla ones, I mean, right? There's actually one more thing that I think people should do. That there was another talk about that in Discord. I think what they could do is they could create a new keyword. In Legions, we had ordnance as a keyword, which was every time a unit with ordnance dealt damage to a vehicle, it took extra damage on top. So why don't they make units with armor penetration? So that you don't have to nerf stuff like Lich Guard and Grizzled Scarboy because, oh my god, armor is so overpowered. Make units that specialize destroying armored units.
Yeah.
That could be great. And when you put this Grizzled Scarboy on Gaskell, then you're like, oh, but what if he's running the armor penetration units and he actually deals more damage to me because of that? So that would be interesting instead of just like getting an update. Grizzled Scarboy now no longer gives any health or something. Instead of that, you could add those specialist units, and it's very Warhammer specific too. I mean, there is armor penetration in Warhammer, right? So there you go. It's both in fantasy and in 40k. There are units that specialize. Have you ever played Total Warhammer?
Yeah.
In there, as you know, there's like, let me give a quick example, guys. So when you're playing the Empire, you can bring out three types of units. For example, there's a swordsman, there's the pikeman, and then you got the great sword, right? The whole idea of the great sword is that it has high armor penetration. The swordsman is cheap, but it's like a bulky tanky unit that's made to hold the line. The halberd has extra damage towards large units, so every unit specializes in something, right? So why don't we slowly go down that path where you have units that are infantry killers, then there are vehicle killers, then there are armored unit killers. It's so Warhammer, so why the hell not?
100%. That would be really cool. Like, well, that you've got the chaos one, haven't you? That destroys a vehicle.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so more of that. Yeah, I think that would be really great. Because you could even have AOE effects that wipes out all infantry. Like so it's like a Will of Gore, but it only affects infantry and things like that. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said with Ultramarines. The only things I mean, I definitely want to see Scaris improve. I want to use that card. I actually wouldn't mind seeing a tweak to the Dreadnought. I think the Dreadnought's damage when it codexes is 1 to 2. I'd actually quite like to see that become 2. Because I think if we could guarantee it as 2, and then obviously things like Tactical Insight makes it 4, I feel like that's a bit more in line with like the Fusillade combo with Tau, where it's like it's 2 AOE, but it can be 4 with a combo card, and I think having that on the Dreadnought stick, I think that the power's just slightly under on the Dreadnought. And also, it's one of those cards where if you're going to commit it, you've kind of got to commit, and it's 8 energy, and then if it hits on 1 or 2, it's very random, isn't it? And then you lose the game or you're in it. Whereas if you just knew it was 2 damage AoE, it's like basically Storm Raven on a stick. I think that would make it much more playable, and as the player, it'd give you a lot more command and control of like the game of what's going on and being able to plot. So I'd quite like to see that. What about chaos? Any where do you think chaos are right now? We already said we think Abaddon is pretty decent. Any kind of obvious nerfs or buffs you want to see?
For chaos, easy one. Move the armor to the Terminator.
I knew you were gonna say it.
I'm gonna keep saying that. Like I'm gonna keep saying that.
Move the armor, please, EG, from
the
Venom Crawler to the Chaos Terminator.
I remember when I made the Chaos card tier list. I think it was together with Midnight. We said that the Venom Crawler was already the best 6-drop. Like, come on, why give it the armor? You're making the faction cheesy, right? Move it to the Terminator, and that way the mid-range Abaddon commits to the Venom Crawler, where the late-game Abaddon commits to the Terminator.
EG,
2+2.
please, can you just do this one for
Please
me? I feel
move
like the
it.
Ecclesiarchs, I'm turning him into a Yorkshireman. He's like, when I were a lad, it's like, when I were a lad, I tell thee, the Terminator, it used to have armor, that bloody thing, and now look at there.
It's a Terminator. It's supposed to be a Terminator. It's supposed to be bulky.
Please make
If you want, as a compensation, they can even reduce the ranged attack on it or something if they wish. But just move it. It's more thematic. It's better. I think that's what needs nerf with the Chaos. Everything else with Chaos, I think it's fine. Nothing is like too powerful. If anybody thinks that like the Black Crusade is too powerful, I mean, we had like tons of cards like that in Horus Heresy Legions as well, because the thing is, it's still very heavy on the RNG, like Rock Invasion, because you can still drop like Noise Marines and stuff like that, right? And if you only commit your deck to strong units, then your early game is dead. So I don't think Black Crusade really needs a change yet.
No.
I think the thing that could change is like that change between Venom Crawler and Terminator, because what that does, it gives the late game Abaddon more options.
Yep.
But on top of that, it makes the Venom Crawler less cheesy. Like, you're not like, oh, Venom Crawler's down, okay, I lose. So it should not be like that, right? That's one of the changes. I'm already afraid to say anything about Sylar, because Sylar has been receiving a lot of shadow buffs. Yeah. And I feel like if now they made him choose his abilities, he would be broken as hell. Yeah. So maybe they can give him a special card or something. Once again, special cards really solve the problems. And I want to remind all you guys, because most of you players also played the other game. Ahriman used to be trash. They give him a special card. Somebody took him to rank 1. And ever since that, he has been a very good warlord.
What if Sylar just rotated? It's like he
we don't need Sylar.
Like he plays he gets one of his 3, and then that almost becomes a shadow. He can't get it again until the other 2 have been played. So like the second one goes on, that becomes a shadow. Now now you know which one's coming, because that's the only unshadowed one, and then they all open up again. And it's something a bit more. Anyway,
something like that. Yeah, he needs a little control. I think Harkin could also use a special card, for example, or a little bit of a, because
Harkin needs HP. Harkin needs. I wish he was the 40 health guy, because he's the one who has to go face to make his ability work. So he needs health. But,
that's a problem that he has. Honestly speaking, the other change that I really need to see as soon as possible, I think Rock Invasion needs to, not Rock Invasion, sorry, Will of Gorg needs to become 8 energy. That's like 100%.
Hold up, before you go on to Orcs.
Yeah.
Quick message, EG, if you're listening. When Space Wolves come out in this game, I want to be able to talk with the Ecclesiarch about the Space Wolves. I do not want to hear him talking about moving the armor from the Venom Crawler to the Terminator. So please, for the love of Logan Grimnar and the future of this podcast, can you please make that change? Thank you.
Yeah, anyway, let's try. Let's try.
Let's talk about.
Let's at least try. If it ends up being powerful, we just changed it.
True.
It cannot end up being as obnoxious as Venom Crawler anyway. True. So there you go.
So look, orcs are broken. So how are we going to fix orcs?
I think orcs don't need like a lot of changes. I think some of the main important things are, you need to make Rock Invasion Will of Gork 8, because 7 is, I think, too early for a card like that. 8 would be all right, because World Eaters had like, orcs are very based on World Eaters from HHL. They even have some of the same cards. The Will of Gork used to be the Conqueror. It was the same card, but for 8 energy. The Speeder used to be a Sark Speeder, which was, once again, exactly the same card. But here's one thing that I don't want to see. For example, I don't want to see EG nerf the Warbiker. I'm saying that because they did that to the Sark Land Speeder. They changed the fast into flank, which I think was not good. I think the Warbiker is in a good spot.
Yeah, the Warbiker has a nice role to play. Definitely.
Keep it as it is.
Very good, but keep that as it is.
I think like there's 2 cards mostly there's a problem. One is the Will of Gork, the other being, I believe, the armor. Perhaps the armor could get reduced to 1 health per damaged unit, because like once again, I love that card, but at the same time, currently it seems like the best thing would be to maybe this is a stretch, but I would like to see the health reduced for the time being, and after they perhaps release some anti-armor capabilities, you could increase the health back to 2. So perhaps currently to just keep it in check, maybe. I'm not sure. But I don't want to see like too many nerfs on the orcs, because I think everything else is relatively all right. Because if they go too far, then it's a dead faction, and we don't want to see a dead faction.
What if it was 4 energy? Give the armor 4 energy, but
But no health.
But no health, no heal.
That could definitely work, actually. Yeah, that could work.
The other thing is to make it more expensive, but I feel like it's on such a balancing thing, that card, because you kind of need to take a turn off to play it. And right now that's fine, but if the game did become more aggro-y, it could completely just not work. So, but I think maybe making it 4 and not having heal could be an option. I also think the one you've not touched on, and I don't know how this card always avoids the nerf bat, is the Veteran Stormboy.
Oh yeah.
And I love the Veteran Stormboy. It's my favorite orc card, I think, but it is too powerful. It is insanely powerful, especially because when you think about it in context of the game, like all of the kind of flyers that come down like turn 5, turn 6, it just comes on with melee damage and flying and wrecks them. Then it gets this amazing buff that gives flank to another unit, which it's just, there's no other 6-drop flanker that's comparable really to. I mean, there is, but it's also in the Orc faction. The Squig Buggy. And by the way, I think the Veteran Stormboy is way better card than the Squig Buggy, but
Squig Buggy is just good against the tower once again.
Yeah, exactly. But the Squig Buggy, it kills itself more often than not, right?
Yeah, it's easy to remove.
Easy
actually,
to remove. But the Vet Stormboy right now comes on, attacks the 5 energy broadside that the tower player just put down, which is meant to be this amazing borderline overpowered unit. And the Vet Stormboy just kills it and still has 3 health flying. It's like, okay. Yeah. And that's before we talk about, Gazgul using hero power to make it 7 strength, or Makari then making it 8 strength. It's like, oh, right, so now you can kill my Dreadnought. Okay, great. Like I just paid 8 energy for that.
One thing that I don't want to see happen, and I'm just going to put it right out there, I don't want to see Makari change. Like, no, I really don't want that to
his
happen.
Faction identity, Makari, he's like a tactical card, isn't he? He adds a degree of playing tactics with the deck, and I think they did a good job with the whole. He goes up and gets more expensive on the turn that he's killed. I think
they did an amazing change with that.
Great.
It was one of the best.
Makari's fine. He's powerful. He's still one of the best legendaries of the game, but his power is spread, so it doesn't feel obnoxious, I don't think.
Yeah.
The only other thing you could do, I thought, with Makari is, like they always say, like a cat has 9 lives. Could he have like a little token? And he has so many lives, and so every time he dies, maybe he's got 6 lives, and then once they run out, then he actually dies. But I don't know. I mean, I'd swallow that, but I'd kind of like where he's at, Makari.
I think what they need to really do is they need to touch up on only 2 cards for now: Will of Gork and the armor, and then we could see where it goes. Because it's never really good to make too many changes, because then you kill the faction once again.
Yeah. No, okay, with that, yeah.
Yeah, so we're maybe that is the thing that we want to do with that. So perhaps that is the idea.
That leaves us with Tyranids and Eldar. So you go where you want to go with that. Because actually, let me start on this one. I was going to say with the Eldar that because we've used this football analogy a little bit. I think Eldar are a great example of it. I think Eldar are like the team that they're like the faction that has the great team. Yeah, they have a brilliant team, but they don't have a very good squad. Eldar are like the faction where you're like, oh, please don't get injured. Because if you get injured, in other words, if I don't have that legendary card, I'm screwed. Like, there's nothing to put in its place. What are you going to put in? A Dire Avenger? It's like a lot of the late game stuff's not very good. I do like that the Wraith Knights, I still say, like, the Wraith Knight does have something very unique for one of those big, massive, super statted units, which is that it can be invulnerable. It can be immune to no mucking about. It can be immune to Will of God. That's actually quite unique. That's actually pretty cool.
Just one thing, VJ, it's not immune to no mucking about.
Or is
No
it not?
mocking about still gonna remove. Yeah.
Does it?
Yes. It's a very nasty thing. That's what makes no mocking about so nasty. Nothing protects you against it.
Why?
Because invulnerable at the way that it's coded in this game, I do believe it's the same as it was in
But Will
HHL.
of God, it does protect you against Will of God.
It does?
Yeah, I've literally had that happen. Yeah.
Okay, then I'm wrong.
Oh, right. I thought you were saying mucking about does remove it, but Will of God doesn't.
Oh no. So
No, if
basically,
you're invulnerable, you're invulnerable. You cannot be damaged or removed.
really?
it's like your warlord. That's what I'm saying. Like I think the Wraith Lord, the Wraith Knight, sorry, is unique in that sense, and it actually does good against orcs. Like the problem with against orcs is you never want to play those big units because it just gets removed. Like or again, even against like Marines and stuff, right? Like not being able to use Inspired Retribution. So I actually do think that the Wraith Knight is decent, and that's why I ran it in the Anvir deck, because the Anvir deck often ends up with shed loads of stones as well. I maybe want to see the Wraith Knight stones reduced by 1 cost to make it invulnerable, to just maybe help people guarantee that invulnerability. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, yeah. So that was my point about the team and the squad. I'd really like to see Eldar have some buffs. That's what I'd love to see. I'd love to deepen the squad. I'd love to look at some of those crap cards, and I'd like that they've not been touched for so long, and I just think they've got a really good team, but they need a deeper squad, and I'd like to see 5 or 6 cards. I've already done a video on cards that I think need buffing, so I'm not going to go over it all here. Go watch that one. But I think the Eldar could do with some buffs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so because it's never really good to see just one warlord being played.
Yeah.
I'm never a fan of that kind of situation, you know. I always prefer to see a lot of different warlords and different factions. Like Galen is awesome. I don't think Galen needs a nerf. I think she's great. I just need to think that we need more support for the other warlords. And I still think that the guy, I don't remember his name. Sorry if you're listening to this, but what he suggested for Keltalk to have a special card that triggers Spirit Stone, that's so good. Like imagine you could play a Wraith Knight and then you could make it trigger a Spirit Stone. So that's already a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would open up so much combo potential. For example,
I'd
also
like to
you could
see some
actually
more.
play the thing that Spirit Host and trigger the thingy, or you know, they could like there could be so much good stuff.
I even wondered about Antok's Warlord power costing 1 instead of 2. I'd
Mm.
because I really like Antok. He's underpowered, but I really like that ability. But what I think for 2 energy, it's too much. So I'll give you an example. Say you get to turn 5, right? If I'm looking at turn 5 and I'm looking at my hand and I'm thinking, shit, like for example, uh maybe I've got a Wraith Knight in hand, but I need my Spirit Stones because I've got the Reclaim the Stars in hand, something like that. So obviously I want to get rid of the Wraith Knight and get the thing. What I think, but then the problem is it's going to cost me 2 energy, and I've got your board to deal with, and it's energy 5, and I've got a Howling Banshee in hand. If I could play the Banshee and then for the 1 energy correct my hand, I think that makes it's subtle, but I think it actually would make a massive difference. And I think 1 energy for that ability is not unreasonable because it's a powerful ability, but it's slow. It's very slow. It doesn't impact the game there and
It
then,
is.
and your opponent gets a chance to react. So yeah, 1 energy for Antok. I'd love to see how that works.
Yeah, perhaps one energy for him would also be a solution.
Mm.
Like there's a lot of things that they could experiment with. But once again, I think one of the things that we really need to keep this game in check, and maybe that's like I wouldn't say it's asking too much actually, because I think it's good for the company itself. I think the frequency of patches needs to change because but you know what say about frequency? They could have this traditional once a month balance patch, absolutely fine. But there is also one other thing that they need to keep in mind. That is when you have something that is apparently overpowered and you see that it's overpowered and like it's evidently a problem, right? It needs to change.
Hot fixes.
Yeah, hot fix it. Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. Like why not? Like just just do it, man.
Yeah.
it's
Just
not
hot
it's not
fix
it's
one
not much of a
thing,
problem.
1 or 2 things, just hot fix that there and then. Yeah. Other games do that, and yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, I don't
Makes a lot
see
of
why
sense.
Legions would not do that, right? It's
Yeah.
it's great, just hotfix it.
Tyranids are a difficult one. I think maybe of all the factions, Tyranids are the hardest one to balance. They scare me in a way because I feel like if they buff it, they already have actually some pretty beefy units. Like if they buff things too much, it could quickly spiral. Uh, so there's something about the way that faction is designed. I'd love to see the Ravener have flank, but they seem to be quite something about the design philosophy for Tyranids. They just don't want to give things flank. And I still want to see the Ravenous Hunter nerfed a little bit. But the problem is if you nerf it, that the faction almost dies. So I'd like to see it just be. I think if you just changed it so it didn't affect the Warlord, Ravenous Hunter, I think that would be a fair start. But they
That
then
would be
need to buff
good,
something
yeah.
else, and I don't know what. I don't know how to do it.
Perhaps there's also another way to deal with this. I think one of the things that you could definitely do there is what you basically could do is what people could think about basically. How about change the mutations, not mutations, sorry, the what's it called again? Their special ability when they
Synapse, Swarm,
not synapse, like
Swarm,
they get like this special buffs, right? What's it called? Oh my god.
special buffs.
For example, what does the Carnifex get when
Oh right, like the gifts that choose one of three, yeah, three buffs.
yeah, exactly what I wanted to say. So that's like one of the things that they could certainly look to change, because that would actually be pretty good. Because if you consider the fact that currently some of those things are useless, like for example, let me give
Yeah,
you a very
make
nice
some of those
example.
more make them more
Yeah,
useful.
let me give you a very simple example, okay? When you're playing like the biomorphologies, you either want stealth or health,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or and armor.
yeah,
Those three are the main ones. The others are kind of useless. Like, why would you get the ranged attack or melee attack, right? So I think what they need to do is make the others viable as well. And I think in that sense, it could actually work.
yeah. I think that'd be fun. I don't know if that fixes things, but it would certainly be fun. They're pretty
Yeah,
powerful Tyranids. They're struggling with the anti-flyer thing at the minute. Terra needs some more synergy, doesn't he, as well? Um,
Terror needs something, man.
he needs more synergy. But I don't think they're going to fix that with a balance patch. To be honest, I think he's just gonna need more cards
Not
to come
anytime
out.
soon, am I right?
No, exactly. No, because we got Space Wolves next, haven't we?
Uh,
Wishful
I
thinking,
wish.
BJ. Wishful thinking. All right, dude.
Space Wolves, you
I
wish. You
think
wish.
that was a good place to wrap it up for today. We've had a good old chat about the meta and stuff. So you're going off now to play Gazgul and try and maintain the lead. Is that right?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try my best to make that happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I will be able to do it. We'll see.
Yeah. I'm rooting for you, man. Unless I catch you, I doubt it. But I mean, the thing
Well,
is,
I
I
mean,
I I can totally see like switching to Gazgul right now would be just insane. But I've played so much Orcs and I am enjoying the Tau, so I kind of want to keep going. But if I get too many Tau mirrors, I just
you might
don't.
wanna.
Yeah, because I just don't love playing mirrors, all day. So
Yeah, it's annoying. It's the same thing with me. If I get too many Gaskell mirrors, then I might actually consider switching. But there's not a lot of people playing Gaskell. I actually get why there's not a lot of people playing Gaskell either. I think it's mostly because it lasts too long.
yeah,
The
yeah,
games that it has.
yeah, yeah.
It gets a little boring.
Well, we shall see where you end. The next podcast might be around the end of the season, so we'll see how you get on. So yeah,
Yeah,
thank you very much everybody for tuning in. Please like the video and thank you for all the subscriptions. I've noticed about you, Ecclesiat, but I've noticed since Tau came out as well. I've got a few new followers and subscriptions. I'm at about 810 subscribers now, which is great. I am pushing for 1,000. Actually, something I didn't say. I had quite a few viewers saying to me, BJ, if you had an affiliate thing on Twitch, I would
Hmm.
give you my sub prime, or I'd want to, why don't you have? Someone said, why don't you have a membership thing, like a join thing on your YouTube? And I was like, Don't know. I just never really. It's kind of not why I do what I do. I think is the main reason. I'm not in this. It's not like my livelihood sort of thing. But then I kind of got excited about it, and I was like, oh, I can make badges, and then I started to think about the guilds and like, oh, you know, if that ever comes into the game. So I have
And
actually
I'm so
created.
excited for that.
Oh man, tell me about it. So I've created it. So if anybody does want to, join and support what we do in that way, but we just appreciate the tuning in, the likes, the subscribes. Obviously, go and check out part 1 on the Ecclesiacs channel if you haven't watched that one yet. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one. Any thoughts you've got on anything we said today? Obviously, as always, leave it in the comments. And aside from that, that's everything from me.
Same for me.
All right, guys, we'll see you in the next one.